Hello and welcome back to Bitesize Boxing. So today I'd like to talk about something that I've been mulling over for several months now, and actually Dell from Blue Collar Sports TV made a really great video talking about this very subject just a couple of days ago, and it kind of jogged my memory and sort of pushed me into thinking I should really talk about this as well. And that is about the negatives of the Saudi involvement, particularly as it pertains to the UK market with boxing. He raised a very good point, and I think it's something that needs to be spoken about by more creators, and that is that as good as the Saudis have been for boxing, of which I do think they've been a net positive, don't get it twisted, don't misquote me on that, I'm not saying the Saudis are bad for boxing, there have been negative ramifications for the UK market as a result. Take, for example, next weekend. We've got Moses Atalma versus Dillian Whyte. That's a good, solid Saturday night fight night in the UK. But it's not taking place in the UK. Sam Goodman versus Nick Ball on the undercard. A solid Saturday night fight night, but it's not taking place in the UK. You go back to, say, 2018. In fact, I've got here in front of me on my phone just a few of the fights nights that took place in 2018. Anthony Joshua versus Joseph Parker, Dillian Whyte versus Lucas Brown. So you had AJ Parker was obviously at Cardiff. I think that was the Principality, wasn't it? Whyte versus Brown at the O2. Bellew versus Hay 2 at the O2, Warrington versus Selby in Leeds, Usyk versus Bellew, I'm not sure where that was, I think that was in Manchester. Oh, that was in Manchester, wasn't it, where we got the infamous, yeah, let's not, possibly the worst commentary we've ever heard. If you know, you know. We got Whyte versus Chisora 2 at the O2 Arena as well, and dotted in between that, you got a solid Saturday night fight night every, 2 weeks at least, and mixed in that you'd get the Tuesday night next gen shows as well. So the UK market was getting loads of boxing. That's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 major shows. So every sort of 2 months you'd get a major show with a decent Saturday night fight night every 2 weeks or so in between those, and then about every 6 weeks in between those you'd get a next gen show on a Tuesday normally. So we got loads of boxing back then and a constant flow, and this is only sort of Matchroom that I'm talking about. You obviously have Frank doing his stuff at Queensberry. It wasn't quite at the level he's up to right now, but he was still doing his thing. I think he had just moved to TNT at that point. So again, or BT as they were then. So again, you got a good variety of consistent boxing. No, you weren't getting these Saudi mega cards, but British boxing was booming, and I remember talking to Ade about this many years ago, and we were both in complete agreement that for a brief period, sort of 2017 to 2018, boxing became the second sport in the UK, which it hasn't been before or since then. Now you'd probably say, I don't know, it's maybe rugby, something like that. Obviously football is head and shoulders above everything else, but boxing for a brief spell of at least a year or so was the second sport in this country. And that was helped largely, not only just because of Anthony Joshua and what he was doing and his commercial success, but also the fact that we had a constant stream of good boxing. Again, when I say good fight nights, I'm talking you had like the likes of Luke Watkins versus Lawrence Okoli on a Saturday night fight night. And that was a decent fight as well, you know? Just solid, you know, okay sort of fights that would supplement the main schedule. We've got none of that at the moment because all of these fighters, they're hanging around for Riyadh season. A lot of them, of course, have got used to these Saudi paydays. And now you've got fights that should really be taking place on UK shores, the likes of a Whyte versus a Talma. You know, that's a good O2 fight, but it's not coming to the O2. I mean, you compare the kind of product we've been getting this year. The only good shows I can think of have been Saudi supplemented as well. So we had Usyk versus Dubois 2, of course. That was at Wembley. That was Riyadh season backed. We had Ben versus Eubank, which again, I'll be honest, as a hardcore fan, it was a bit of a gimmick fight, but it was what it was. But again, that was Riyadh season backed. What else? We had Kakachi Wood. I mean, Kakachi Wood, could make an argument back in 2018, 2017. Is that a paper? That's probably just a Saturday night fight night in of itself. Do you know what I mean? That's probably not even one of the bigger fights on the schedule. And that's about the biggest non-Saudi backed fight that we've had this year. I think it was non-Saudi backed anyway. I mean, you look at the regular kind of fight nights we've been getting in the UK this year. In fact, let me see if I can get some of them up. Okay, I've got some here. Yeah, Kakachi versus Lee Wood at Nottingham, that was one. Josh Taylor versus Eko Esserman. I mean, Josh Taylor was a washed up 140-pounder fighting Eko Esserman, who's what, a domestic level welterweight in the UK. Yeah, okay, yeah, Johnny Fisher, Dave Allen too. How can I forget? Again, Johnny Fisher versus Dave Allen was one of the biggest fights that wasn't Saudi backed in the UK this year. I mean, that is probably fourth to the bottom on an undercard back in 2018. That's because that's where, you know, Dave Allen was fighting. That's how the likes of Dave Allen, Nick Webb, it's of that same level. And Dave Allen, Nick Webb, if I'm not mistaken, was the opening fight on Parker versus White, wasn't it? The opening fight on the undercard, you know, the one that they show when no one is there at about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. That level fight is now headlining in the UK in 2025 because that's the best we're getting. And that's one of the better fights we've had this year. So the point I'm trying to make is that Saudi involvement, although it has definitely been a net positive, there has been a massive, massive sort of domino effect on the UK market. And what we're getting served up here has been shocking. Let's see here now as well. While I'm on one, I mean, what have we got? Yeah, okay, yeah. Domestic development cards that we've had. Callum Simpson, Steve Woodall. I mean, Christ alive. That is an undercard fight on a Saturday night fight night in 2018. That isn't a headliner in, you know, one of our bigger cards this year. I mean, Christ alive. Yeah, Ball versus TJ Doheny. Again, that's probably a co-main of a decent card back, you know, a few years ago. Not a headliner on one of the bigger fights we've had on these shores in its own right. So, again, it's a shame. I love what the Saudis are doing generally, but I'm not going to be one of these guys that just sits here and just sucks up to the Saudis because I'm, you know, hoping that someone sees this channel and I get a bag. That's not what I'm about. That's not what I want to be about. I'd much rather be true to myself and honest to myself and just say things as I see it. And that is the case. Yeah, the Saudis have been good, but this is having an awful effect on British boxing. And look, this is going to have a negative these are going to have negative repercussions in the long run, make no mistake about it. I can already see the popularity of boxing dwindling in this country. You go back, you know, even 2, 3, 4 years, a lot of casuals at work and whatever, they'd be checking for boxing. They go, oh, well, I know you're into boxing. What about this guy and what about this guy? I don't think I get that at all now. It's now a case of, oh, there was some boxing on last night. Oh, yeah, it was big. It was at Wembley. Oh, was it? Oh, okay. Like that, you know what I mean? There's not that interest. And I understand a lot of that is the Anthony Joshua factor. A lot of that is even, to a lesser extent, but still, the Tyson Fury factor. And of course, as those guys are now kind of being ushered out, there is naturally less interest. But you walk down the street and ask how many people know Moses Atauma, and the answer is not that many. Moses Atauma should be building a big profile just as someone like AJ was in the UK. But he's not. He's being ushered out into these Saudi shows, as we're seeing now, and his name isn't getting out there in the way it probably deserves to. And that in turn will just hurt the UK market. So I think it's a shame. But you let me know what you think. I'd genuinely be really interested for your input on this one, because this is one that I think will divide opinion, but in my opinion, it's pretty clear cut. I think as good as the Saudis have been, this is a negative. This is just a negative overall for UK boxing. We're getting crap cards. What else can I say? It's as simple as that. But there we go. You let me know what you think. Thank you very much. Take care. Cheers.